This is an overview of George Washington as the first president. In 1789, George Washington took office with John Adams as his vice president. The goal and objective of these two men was to show the true strength of the country and its government after the failures of the Articles of Confederation. The two men took office in New York City and ran the country from there. As president, Washington knew that every action he took would set a precedent and have a lasting impact on the government. One of the first things he saw that he wanted to take care of was the judicial system of our country. Article 3 of the Constitution created a Supreme Court, but not really do anything for a national court system. So the Federal Judiciary Act addresses this and creates the federal court system which we currently use today. Under Washington's leadership, he also knew that he would need help making important decisions. So he established three departments to help him with his decision making. He established the War Department, the State Department, and the Department of Treasury. Henry Knox oversaw the War Department, and the War Department would control the defense of the nation. The State Department was ran by Thomas Jefferson, and the State Department oversees relations between the U.S. and other countries. Alexander Hamilton was in charge of the Department of Treasury, and it managed the government's money. In addition to these three departments, George Washington also picked Edmund Randolph as the first Attorney General to advise the government on all legal matters. George Washington would meet with these men in order to help make all decisions that were vital to the country. Coming off the American Revolution, by 1789, the country was in extreme economic turmoil. The country was $52 million in debt. As the leader of the Department of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton's responsibility was to get the country out of debt. He came up with an economic plan that he believed would help the country succeed in that matter. In this plan, he would figure out how to pay off all war debts, raise government revenues, and to create a national bank. He figured that the government needed to pay off all these war debts, and he had many critics of his plan because the South did not feel like it was their responsibility to help the North pay off their debts after the South had paid off theirs. They had to come up with a compromise in order to get this plan to go through. The nation's capital moved from New York City to a territory in between Virginia and Maryland and would become Washington, D.C., and that's where the country will be ran from. In order to raise money for the country and to have the country generate money, Alexander Hamilton decided on tariffs. Now, tariffs are taxes on all imported products, which would force people or encourage people to buy products made in America, which would generate more money within the country without having to pay for all the importation of other goods. The last thing is what made many people upset, and that was the creation of a national bank. Many people did not like the fact that Hamilton tried to create a national bank because it was written nowhere in the Constitution, so it caused lots of controversy. It mainly caused issues with the Anti-Federalists because they felt like the government was abusing and using power that it did not have. As the Anti-Federalists believed, they wanted to make sure that the rights of the common people were looked after and that the government would not abuse its power, and they saw this as a power abuse by the elite and wealthy, in which Alexander Hamilton was a part of. Alexander Hamilton argued that the Constitution was loosely written and they should not be so strict in following the guidelines of the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton addressed the idea by saying that Article 1 of the Constitution gives us the necessary and proper powers in order to meet the needs of the people. And so since the Constitution was loosely written and he thought that this national bank was necessary, then the government should have the power to create this national bank. George Washington ended his presidency in 1797. He only stayed in office for 8 years, which set a precedent that all other presidents would follow. No president may ever be elected more than 2 terms or 8 years in office. George Washington saw a lot of turmoil between the people who he saw as advisors and friends and co-workers within the government. So in his farewell address, he advised that there should be no political factions because the unity of the country would lead it into success and make it prosper as the country aged and as we progress through time.